Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the tiled corridors of the Topkapi Palace, a world of perfumed courtyards, silken slippers, and the strange stress of trying not to disappoint a sultan with caffeine jitters. You're the chief, coffee taster of the Ottoman Empire, and your morning begins long before the rest of Istanbul opens its bleary eyes. The call to prayer echoes out over the city, a low and melodic thread weaving through the fog that curls around domes and minarets. You stir beneath heavy covers, the faint smell of roasted beans already lingering from yesterday's robes. Your joints creak partly from age, mostly from decades of squatting over boiling brass pot sand. You shuffle to the window below. The Bosphorus is still almost holding its breath with you. You stretch, light a taper, and begin to dress. Robes first, layered precisely, rich cotton but not flashy, dark enough to hide stains, light enough to survive the kitchens. Then the sash embroidered with tulips and your little tasting pouch, the embroidered one with the polished ivory spoon and your tiny journal. It contains your notations on over 400 coffee blends. You're quite proud of that. Someone once stole it and used it as a pillow. They were found. Eventually, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into your slippers and start the walk to the palace kitchens, guided only by the lantern light and the sleepy shuffle of a eunuch escort who smells faintly of rosewater and burnt sugar. The palace is never fully asleep. Someone is always boiling something. By the time you reach the great kitchen wing, dawn has barely kissed the edge of the sky, but inside heat, aroma, utensils of brass and copper clink quietly. Steam rises from every surface, and in the corner your domain awaits. A row of low charcoal stoves, each set with tiny brass pots called cesspits, some still crusted from last night's emergency tastings. There's a joke among the kitchen boys. You don't taste coffee, interrogated. Maybe they're not wrong. You begin your first test pot in silence, using water from the palace spring and a recent delivery of Yemeni beansprout, dry, aromatic, ground with a mortar you've owned longer than some of the junior cooks have been alive. As the sez simmers, the smell deepens, earthy, nutty, and just a little smoky. You lean in to breathe it fully, as if deciphering a letter from someone you loved once and never quite forgave. The first sip is critical. You let it sit on your tongue, pressing your lips together slowly, too acidic, a bit grassy, possibly mishandled during transport, or perhaps the storage sacks were stored near cardamom era, unless intentional. You note it quietly, then toss the remainder into a clay basin. Historians still argue whether these tastings influenced imperial trade decisions, or if they were mostly ceremonial. But you know the truth. The Sultan once cancelled a treaty because he detected mold. You brew again and again. Slight variations, temperature, grind, steep time. This is your meditation, your ritual. There's something almost holy about it. Each cup a whisper from a far-off plantation carried across deserts and seas, just for your palate by the time the sun rises. You've tested 10 varieties and burned your tongue twice. You sip cool water and look out over the courtyard where pigeons strut importantly like tiny bureaucrats. Somewhere behind you, a junior steward tiptoes in with a scroll tied in purple ribbon. The Sultan is awake. Your heart does a quiet pirouette. Of dread, it's time to choose his morning cup. This is where you earn your silver spoon. Not all beans are fit for royal lips before breakfast. Not all grinds will pass muster with a man whose breakfast companions include poets, astrologers, and possibly the severed head of a rival prince. You select a blend from the Tiama Highlands, bright, floral, and with a finish so smooth it could charm a snake into wearing shoes. You brew it slowly, watching the foam rise the way a jewel rises in a bath of perfume. Then, with trembling grace, you decant the steaming liquid into a tiny porcelain cup painted with irises. You carry it on a silver tray, walking with the deliberateness of someone balancing power itself. A eunuch leads the way, swishing down long corridors while muttering something about boiled eggs and the Grand Vizier's latest poetry attempts at the threshold of the Sultan's chamber. You bow and extend the tray. You don't look directly at him, you never do, but you hear him sip. You hear the pause, the small, appreciative sigh. You are not exiled today. Good, and because it's early. And because today hasn't exploded into drama just yet, you allow yourself a small reward. You tuck a single sugared almond from the reception bowl into your sleeve for later as you exit. You pass a mural one you've seen 1,000 times, caravans and camels winding through the hedges. But today, you notice something small, a painted man brewing coffee over a fire. He's smiling. You wonder if he's supposed to be you. You retrace your steps through the palace, past the hush of velvet-lined corridors and the murmurs of servants pretending not to notice each other. The silver tray now empty, your hands free again. You breathe deeply through your nose and roll. Your shoulders, the hardest part of the day, is done or so you tell yourself every morning without learning the lesson, because this is the Ottoman court, and nothing is ever just coffee. Back in the kitchens, your assistants await like anxious hawks in aprons. They've arranged neat rows of small labeled jars, Saitamo, Hara, Mocha Matari, some even more obscure blends from ports you've only seen on maps. The new crate of beans from Ethiopia is sitting unopened, its wax seal still intact, stamped with a merchant's sigil that looks suspiciously like a goat doing a cartwheel. You pry the crate open with a curved dagger ceremonial thing, absurdly over-decorated for bean slicing duty, and breathe in. Oh, this one is going to be a problem. See, good coffee doesn't always announce itself with sweetness or spice. Sometimes it just has presence. This one smells ... confrontational, smoky, dry, with the sharp acidity of something half-fermented and totally unapologetic. A lesser taster might reject it outright. You, though, you're intrigued. The Ottoman Empire is not short on intrigue. And in your line of work, coffee is more than a beverage. It's leverage, status, political theater served in tiny cups. Brewed wrong, it can offend a visiting dignitary. Brewed right, it can ease centuries of inherited grudge. You've watched the Grand Vizier close a trade deal on nothing but pistachios and well-timed caffeine. So you taste. You roast the beans lightly, grind them by hand with your worn brass mortar, and prepare a pot. The savor hisses like a sleepy cat as the brew rises. When it's done, you pour a modest amount into a ceramic taster's cup and let it cool just slightly. The first sip is jarring, sharp as a scolding. But then wait. The second sip softens. It blooms. You raise one eyebrow, then the other. It tastes like rain on warm stone. Strange, but compelling. You're already scribbling a note for future reference. Use sparingly. Diplomatic guests only. Possibly dangerous. Historians still argue whether coffee in the Ottoman Empire was truly a diplomatic tool or just an elite indulgence masquerading as strategy. But you know that every ounce of power here is wrapped in velvet and served with a saucer. Speaking of velvet, you're summoned next to the Devon chamber where the ministers bicker and the air always smells faintly of sweat and rose oil. A steward intercepts you halfway with an awkward curtsy. She hands you a gold-foiled envelope. It's sealed with the emblem of the Crimean Khanate. You sigh. It's going to be that kind of day. Inside the envelope, a sample packet, finely ground, dusty rose in color. Not coffee, but something else. A gift, perhaps, or a trap. The note included is short, scrawled in Cyrillic and French. You recognize one phrase: alternative morning stimulant. Back in your tasting quarters, you examine the powder more closely. Not opium, thank heavens. Probably not poison. You sniff, cough, and decide it smells like dried beetroot and salt. You're about to toss it into the brazier when your youngest assistant Halal, sweet, gullible, constantly hungry, walks in and offers to try it first. Brave boy or foolish, you let him. He swishes a spoonful in warm water, grimaces, and says it tastes like angry mud. You laugh your first real laugh of the day. Then you give him a honey date as reward and tell him to go mop the spice room. The day wears on. You continue tasting 3 more standard roasts, one laced with cinnamon for a princess's upcoming birthday banquet, and a frankly chaotic blend someone labeled Merchant's Midnight Panic. You don't know who roasted it, but they should probably be exiled. At this point, your tongue is numb, and your handwriting looks like a chicken danced on the page. You switch to water for a moment. Lemon slices, cool ceramic cup. You stare out. The kitchen's high lattice windows at the inner courtyard, eunuchs pass like shadows. Somewhere, a lute plinks gently from a far wing. Then the head cook arrives, a man of terrifying efficiency and suspiciously quiet shoes. He speaks with an accent from the eastern provinces and always smells faintly of cardamom and threat. He hands you a scroll. New rule, he says. The Sultan has requested your presence at tomorrow's poetry breakfast. You will prepare a coffee flight. You blink. A what? A tasting menu. 7 cups, different beans, progressive flavors. You pinch the bridge of your nose and sigh. This was inevitable. Ottoman rulers were known for their strange culinary whims. Once, a sultan demanded a dessert shaped like every phase of the moon. Another insisted on fig-stuffed pigeons soaked in rose water. Compared to that, a coffee flight is almost reasonable. Almost. You sit back down at your work table and begin sketching flavor arcs. Earthy to floral, bright to smoky, stimulating to sleep-inducing, one for each poem the Sultan might attempt to recite without falling asleep himself. You'll use the Yemeni blend first, dependable, elegant, then maybe that Ethiopian bean for a jolt of novelty. The risky one? You'll save that for cup 5, the point where taste buds are either numb or open to miracles. You pause, you realize you've forgotten lunch. Again, you nibble on a handful of roasted chickpeas someone left near your spoons. Not satisfying, but vaguely crunchy. You think about the lavish banquets you help caffeinate trays of grilled lamb, saffron rice, candied chestnut sand, yet here you are, chewing dry legumes while scribbling poetic coffee notes. This is the life of the Ottoman chief coffee taster, regal, revered. Slightly dehydrated, still, there's something soothing about the routine. The clink of brass, the steam rising in measured curls, the delicate weight of a cup in your hand. You think about how far the beans have come from the mountain farms of Yemen, across dangerous trade routes, past bribes and customs fees, and the odd misplaced camel to land here. In your sezv, you feel a strange tenderness toward them, toward the process, the quiet dignity of it all. Outside, the light shifts toward gold. The palace hums softly in the background, as if dozing between plots. You lean back, sip the last dregs of your cooling test cup, and smile at the earthy bitterness. Your work isn't done, but this cup, at least, is complete. Morning arrives earlier than it should. You haven't even peeled the sleep from your eyes when a kitchen boy knocks 3 brisk taps. No more, no less. It's the agreed-upon rhythm for your needed, but nobody is dead. You grunt. Acknowledgement, roll over, and contemplate whether a life of rural goat herding might offer more reasonable hours, but the Sultan's poetry breakfast is today. You rise slowly. Every joint protests, your knees cracked like peppercorns in a mortar. But once you've splashed your face with rose-scented water and slipped into your embroidered tasting robe, dark brown silk number with discreet crescent patterns stitched along the sleeves, you begin to feel like yourself again. That is, perpetually exhausted, mildly caffeinated, and responsible for the survival of at least 3 political treaties. The palace kitchens are already humming, fires crackle, copper pots gleam, spices float in the air like invisible fog. You catch whiffs of cardamom, clove, cinnamon, and saffron before you even cross the threshold. But your domain isn't the main kitchen. You slip into the quieter, annexa small, stone-walled tasting room designed for fewer fires and more focus. On the counter, 7 small bags of coffee beans, each labeled with imperial calligraphy. The Yemen marker, the risky Ethiopian blend, a mild one from the Arabian coast, and the rest, well, let's just say you've taken some creative liberties. One has been aged in clay pots buried underground for a month. Another has been smoked gently over date wood. The 7th, it's your wild card, a blend infused lightly with rose petals and crushed pistachio skins. You begin roasting, not all at once. Each bean requires its own method, its own rhythm. The Yemen beans you roast over low flame until they crack just once, first crack, as you like to call it. The Ethiopian gets a higher heat, fast and bold, like its flavor. The clay-aged beans, you barely roast them, they've already transformed. Historians still argue whether Ottoman coffee roasters used consistent profiles or whether it was a chaotic blend of instinct and accident. But your method is something between alchemy and jazz. You go by smell, by sound, by the way the smoke curls when the beans hit the pan, while the brews cool. You compose your tasting scroll, not for the Sultan, of course he won't read it, but for his handlers, who will whisper curated notes into his jeweled ear. Cup 1. Classic gravitas. Maca beans, medium roast, notes of earth and old books. Cup 2. Storm on the highlands. Ethiopian roast, sharp and bright, may cause poetic rambling. Cup 3. Soft shores. Arabian coastal beans with nutty finish, gentle, inoffensive. A palate. Reset. Cup 4. Whispering smoke, claged beans, light roast, date wood finish. Best consumed in mysterious silence. Cup 5. Memory of roses. Rose petal infusion, slight bitterness. May inspire rhyming about lost love. Cup 6. Sultan's risk. The experimental blend. You don't even describe this one. You let fate handle it. Cup 7. Goodbye, sweet. World, decaf. For closing remarks and the obligatory nap, your assistant. Halal appears with a tray of porcelain cups. He's trimmed his mustache too short again. It looks like a confused caterpillar. You don't say anything. He's too cheerful to deserve cruelty this early. You arrange the flight in precise order. Each cup exactly 2 fingers apart on a polished mahogany board. Halal adjusts one slightly to the left, and you slap his hand lightly, but with meaning, art. You say, the journey to the breakfast chamber is a short but solemn procession. You lead, carrying the tray with the reverence of a high priest. Behind you, Halal holds the scroll, and a backup says, just in case someone important demands an encore. You both pass through carved arches under domes painted with constellations, past guards whose expressions suggest a long-standing boredom with every aspect of their employment. Inside the chamber, courtiers are already seated on floor cushions, lounging in loose silks, nibbling on honeyed figs, and listening to the royal poet drone about tulips. The Sultan sits elevated, wrapped in a robe the color of ripe melon, his beard freshly perfumed. He looks half awake, half annoyed, and entirely too curious. You bow deeply. You do not speak. The poet drones on, oblivious. Your tray is placed before the Sultan. A cup is handed to him. He drinks the first with mild interest. The second, he raises one eyebrow. By the third, he glances toward you. The fourth makes him pause mid-sentence. By the fifth, he mutters something about his first love and a night in Bursa. The sixth, he sips and closes his eyes. You hold your breath. Everyone holds their breath. He opens one eye and says simply, intriguing. The room exhales in relief. Cup 7 is served, and he chuckles a sound rarely heard and always alarming. Decaf. He says, you mock me. You bow again, slowly, and reply, only gently, Your Majesty. To your astonishment, he laughs. Later, back in the tasting room, you sit in silence with halal and a piece of dried apricot. That went well, he says. You nod. Better than the fig incident. He shudders. We don't talk about the fig incident. You're about to sip your own personal brew lukewarm by now when a runner arrives with a folded note. You sigh, take it, and open it slowly. Inside, a summons. The Queen Mother requests a private consultation. Her preferred roast has been disappointing of late. Of course it has. You change into your second best, robe of the blue one with embroidered lemons, and make your way to her wing of the palace. The Queen Mother lives in a world of hushed voices, an overpowering perfume. Her rooms are filled with porcelain cats and embroidered cushions. She greets you like a distant cousin who once borrowed jewelry and never returned it. I want coffee, she says. the kind I had before the rains. You blink, before which reigns your grace. She narrows her eyes. You know, you nod, of course, you know. There's a theory whispered among the palace staff that the Queen Mother has a preternatural sense for atmospheric pressure. She claims that her taste in coffee shifts with the barometric tide. Some say it's nonsense. Others note that her predictions of seasonal wind changes have a better track record than the Admiralty. Historians still argue whether women in the Ottoman palace wielded real power, or only influence cloaked in gossip. You've seen enough to know the truth lies somewhere in between. The Queen Mother once had a vizier fired for putting too much mint in her evening tea. You prepare a special blend, darker roast, spiced with cardamom and a hint of citrus peel. It reminds you of storm clouds gathering over the BOS 4RUS. She sips, nods once, acceptable, coming from her. It's the equivalent of a standing ovation. On the way back to your quarters, Halal catches up with you, puffing slightly. Do you ever think, he asks, about doing something else, like ... fencing lessons, or becoming a map maker? You glance at him and leave all this, you say, gesturing broadly to the palace, the coffee, the danger. He grins. Fair. You both walk in silence for a while. Then Halal adds, but maybe just one fencing lesson for emergencies. You chuckle. Just one. The day ends as it began, quiet, smoky, and deeply carbonated. You remove your robe, stretch your aching back, and wonder briefly what tomorrow will bring. Probably more coffee, possibly poison, hopefully neither. The sun barely peeks through the lattice windows as you begin your day with a ritual nearly as important as the coffee itself. The cleaning and maintenance of your equipment. The palace may glisten with gold and silk, but your humble roasting pans and delicate porcelain cups demand the utmost care, for even the finest brew can be spoiled by a single speck of dust or an unnoticed chip. You start by inspecting your copper cesps, those small, long-handled pots where the magic happens. Each has its own personality, the one with the slightly dented side, a remnant of an overly enthusiastic sultan's servant years ago, the one with the faint copper-green patina that gives a subtle temps to the coffee brewed within. You polish them meticulously, imagining the countless sips they have borne witness to, secret meetings, whispered romances, and the occasional frustrated muttering when a blend disappoints. Next, the cups, porcelain so thin it almost feels like paper. You arrange them in a careful circle, like ancient artifacts awaiting judgment. One wrong scratch, and the Sultan might refuse your brew outright. You remember Astoria Palace legend that a cup once shattered during a royal tasting, and the taster was exiled for a fortnight. Whether true or not, it's a tale that keeps you vigilant. As you polish, your mind drifts to the origins of the coffee bean itself. You imagine a long journey from the highlands of Ethiopia, where goats supposedly first munched the berries, to bustling Arabian bazaars, and finally here into the very heart of the Ottoman court. Historians still debate the exact routes and times coffee reached Istanbul, but its rise to courtly prominence is unquestionable. You consider how coffee was once a suspicious drink, viewed by some as a sorcerer's brew. Sufi mystics embraced it, using its stimulating effects to enhance their devotions. Yet, many religious leaders initially banned coffee, worried it might inspire too much wakefulness and mischief. The Sultan, however, cared less about such debates and more about the quality of his morning cup. After cleaning, you prepare a small batch of beans for your own enjoyment. You roast them slowly, watching as the aroma unfolds like a secret story whispered just for you. You cup the freshly brewed coffee, savoring the bittersweet complexity, a dance of smoke, earth, and something faintly floral. At that moment, a messenger arrives, carrying an invitation from the imperial apothecary. The apothecary wishes to discuss a curious experiment, blending coffee with medicinal herbs, supposedly to aid digestion or calm the nerves after lengthy council meetings. You raise an eyebrow. Coffee as medicine is nothing new, but the proposed mixtures border on the eccentric. Later, in the dimly lit apothecary's chamber, filled with jars of dried leaves and mysterious powders, you watch as the herbalist mixes ground coffee with cardamom, mint, and a hint of something that smells faintly like lavender. The resulting brew is delicate and calming, far from the bold jolt you're used to delivering. Historians still argue whether these blends truly had medicinal value or were more about courtly fashion. The apothecary remarks, handing you a steaming cup. You nod thoughtfully, appreciating both the science and the ceremony behind it. You sip slowly, feeling the warmth spread gently through you. The palace outside continues its restless hum, footsteps on marble, distant music, the occasional murmur of intrigue, but here, in this small room, time seems to slow. As you leave, you pause by a window overlooking the Bosphorus. The water glints silver in the morning light, and a gentle breeze carries the faint scent of sea salt mixed with the earthy aroma of coffee roasting below. You breathe deeply, grounding yourself for the hours ahead. Back in your quarters, you find a letter from the royal librarian. It mentions a recently acquired manuscript detailing ancient coffee rituals from distant lands, from far-off African kingdoms, others from the mysterious trade cities of India. You smile at the thought of the endless stories held within. Those pages, each waiting to be savored like a perfect cup. You settle down with the manuscript, allowing yourself to drift into the past, where every sip tells a story, and every story soothes the soul. The afternoon sun spills through the lattice windows, casting patterned shadows on the tiled floors of the palace. You find yourself drawn once more to the fragrant realm of the coffee gardener, lesser known but crucial part of your duties. This garden, tucked behind the palace walls, is where the journey of the coffee bean truly begins. You walk slowly through rows of delicate plants, their glossy leaves shimmering in the light, beans hidden in clusters like secret treasures waiting to be discovered. You kneel beside one of the bushes, brushing your fingers lightly over the smooth green berries. They have yet to ripen, but you've learned that the timing of the harvest can subtly alter the flavor of the final brew. A week too early, and the beans carry a grassy bitterness. A week too late, and they turn overly sweet, bordering on cloying. It is, in many ways, a practice of patience and respect, qualities that your role demands as much as any palate. The garden itself is a living tapestry of the empire's vast reach. The coffee plants here originated from the Arabian Peninsula, but intertwined among them are experimental saplings gifted from distant provinces, the highlands of Ethiopia, the lush hills of Yemen, and even rare seedlings brought back from caravans along the Silk Road. You imagine the journeys these tiny plants have made, a botanical map of the empire's cultural intersections. You pause to listen. The garden is alive with quiet sounds. The gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze, the soft murmur of palace staff tending nearby herbs and flowers, the occasional chirp of a distant bird. There's a calming rhythm here, a natural counterpoint to the bustling palace life. Nearby, a cluster of gardeners works on a patch of lavender and mint herbs, often added to coffee blends for their soothing aromas. You recall how the imperial apothecary once proposed a medicinal infusion combining these herbs with coffee grounds, a concoction said to aid digestion and ease tension after long days in the court. You wander towards a small stone fountain at the garden center, its waters trickling softly. You dip your fingers in, feeling the coolness spread through your skin, refreshing contrast to the day's heat. The scent of jasmine floats on the air, mingling with the faintest hint of roasted coffee from the nearby kitchen. As you stroll, your thoughts drift to the social rituals surrounding coffee drinking in the empire. It is more than a beverage. It is a symbol of hospitality, a catalyst for conversation, a subtle weapon in political maneuvering. You imagine courtiers gathering in plush chambers, passing delicate porcelain cups, while engaging in whispered debates and playful banter. You've witnessed how a perfectly brewed cup can soften the hardest negotiator or spark a fleeting smile in a tense room. Historians still debate how much these coffee rituals shaped Ottoman diplomacy, but it's clear that the sensory experience, the aroma, the warmth, the bittersweet taste, became an essential part of the empire's cultural fabric. Coffee houses, once considered dens of idleness and sedition, eventually evolved into centers of social life and intellectual exchange, where poets, scholars, and merchants mingled over steaming cups. Your own role, while less glamorous, is equally pivotal. You are the guardian of these moments, ensuring that each cup delivered to the Sultan, his family, and his court carries not just flavor, but a story, a whispered echo of distant lands and timeless traditions. You find a quiet bench beneath an olive tree and sit for a moment, savoring the peacefulness. You pull out a small notebook and jot down observations about the garden's growth patterns, potential new blends, and a few odd ideas for experimental roasts you've been entertaining. The palace bell chimes in the distance, signaling the approach of evening. You stand, stretching muscles that have been stiff from hours of careful work. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, perhaps another demanding tasting session, or a surprise visit from a foreign envoy eager to impress with rare beans from their homeland. But for now, in this garden, filled with the mingling scents of earth and coffee, you find a brief sanctuary, a moment to breathe, reflect, and prepare for the endless cycle of taste and tradition that defines your life. You awaken to a soft haze filtering through the palace windows, the morning light casting long, lazy shadows over the cool marble floors. The day ahead promises more than just the familiar swirl of roasted beans and delicate aromas. Today, you are summoned to a unique task, a rare chance to attend the Sultan's personal consultation with the empire's master blender, a man reputed to have an almost supernatural palate. You make your way through the winding corridors, the faint echo of your footsteps mingling with distant murmurs and the occasional clink of delicate china. The air is thick with anticipation and the subtle, comforting scent of freshly ground coffee. It's a smell that has become part of your identity, as familiar as the fabric of your robes, or the worn leather of your notes. The master blender's chamber is a small sanctuary filled with wooden shelves lined with jars of exotic spices, rare, coffee beans from across the empire, and delicate porcelain vessels. The blender greets you with a knowing smile, his eyes twinkling beneath thick brows. "We shall embark on a journey today," he says softly, "to craft a blend worthy of the Sultan's discerning taste." The session begins with the tasting of beans from distant provinces, some from the volcanic soils of Yemen, others from the verdant hills of Ethiopia, and a handful from the newly established plantations in Anatolia. Each bean carries a story, a unique character shaped by climate, soil, and the hands that cultivated it. You listen closely as the blender describes the subtle nuances, the brightness of acidity in one, the rich earthiness in another, the floral notes that hint at jasmine and rose. You recall how the origins of coffee intertwine with the empire's history, how trade routes and conquests brought not only beans but ideas and cultures. Historians still argue whether the Ottomans or the Ottomans introduced coffee to Istanbul first, but there is no debate about the empire's role in refining the art of brewing and tasting. As the blender begins to mix small batches, you watch the alchemy unfold. A pinch of cardamom here, a dusting of cinnamon there, each addition altering the brew's character. The room fills with a symphony of aromas, inviting and mysterious. You take a tentative sip from a porcelain cup the blender hands you. The liquid is smooth with a gentle bitterness that fades into a lingering sweetness. There is a hint of something unexpected, perhaps a trace of clove or a whisper of citrus. You imagine the Sultan's reaction, the moment when he raises the cup to his lips, judging not just the flavor, but the story it tells. The blender leans closer, lowering his voice. The Sultan values subtlety, complexity, a blend that invites contemplation, not haste. You nod, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more firmly on your shoulders. Your role is not simply to taste, but to understand, to translate these sensory experiences into moments that soothe and connect. Midway through the session, a surprise visitor arrives, a foreign envoy from Persia, carrying a gift of rare beans and an invitation to explore new brewing techniques from their homeland. The envoy's manner is polite but confident, eager to share stories of Cabernet-fused coffee and intricate serving rituals that blend art with ceremony. You exchange guarded glances with the master blender, aware that such exchanges are as much about diplomacy as they are about flavor. The empire's vastness depends on these delicate balances, where even a cup of coffee can be a token of alliance or rivalry. Later, alone, you reflect on the complexity of your position. You are a humble servant to the senses, yet your work touches the lives of emperors and diplomats. Each cup you prepare carries whispers of distant lands, secrets of cultivation, and echoes of human connection. You remember a curious anecdote. A court poet once claimed that the coffee taster's palate was a map of the empire itself, charting journeys through taste and memory. Whether fanciful or true, the image resonates with you as the day fades into evening. You retire to your quarters with a quiet sense of fulfillment. Outside, the Bosphorus shimmers under a canopy of stars, and the distant call of the muezzin mingles with the fading scent of coffee beans cooling in their pans. You prepare one final cup before sleeper blend of your own making, modest but heartfelt. You savor the warmth, allowing the flavors to lull your mind into calmness. Tomorrow will bring more challenges, more stories to uncover, and countless moments to perfect the art that defines you. In this quiet, ordinary ritual lies the extraordinary power of a simple drink to bridge cultures, soothe souls, and connect a vast empire through the subtle magic of taste. The morning light spills softly into your quarters, a gentle invitation to another day steeped in the delicate craft of coffee tasting. You rise slowly, aware that each day here offers not only the repetition of ritual, but the subtle variations that keep your work endlessly fascinating. Today, you will venture beyond the palace walls, into the bustling streets of Istanbul, where coffee's pulse beats strongest among the people. You step out into the vibrant city, the air alive with the mingling scents of spices, fresh bread, and, of course, coffee everywhere. From the smoky haze of street vendors' cauldrons to the refined aroma wafting from elegant coffee houses, this sensory landscape is your classroom, your marketplace, and your laboratory all at once. As you weave through narrow alleys and wide bazaars, you observe the variety of beans and brews, the ingenious methods of preparation and presentation that differed by district and clientele. In the shadow of the great mosque, a vendor serves thick, syrupy coffee in tiny copper cups, while near the port, sailors savor bitter, black brews laced with cardamom and honey. You pause at a small shop, known for its unique roasting technique. Beans are slowly toasted over fragrant pine needles, imparting a subtle resinous note. You ask the roaster about his process, fascinated by the blend of tradition and innovation that defines the empire's coffee culture. Historians still debate the extent to which regional variations influenced the empire's standardized brewing methods, but the coexistence of diverse practices reveals a lively dialogue between local customs and imperial tastes. You taste samples, each cup a story told in flavors and textures, some bold and assertive, others delicate and whispering. The coffee houses themselves are microcosms of Ottoman society, places where artisans, poets, and merchants mingle, where news is exchanged and ideas bloom. You reflect on the role of coffee houses as spaces of relaxation and reflection, even as authorities sometimes viewed them with suspicion, fearing the spirited debates they fostered. You recall how the empire's rulers occasionally imposed bans on coffee and coffee houses, worried about their potential for unrest, only to relent when the public's attachment proved unbreakable. As the sun climbs higher, you find yourself at a coffee house favored by scribes and scholars. The air here is thick with the aroma of ink, parchment, and roasted beans. You settle into a corner, savoring a cup while listening to quiet conversations about poetry, philosophy, and the latest imperial edicts. You take out your notebook, recording impressions of flavors and techniques, mindful that your role extends beyond tasting to documenting and preserving this evolving culture. The city is a living canvas, painted with the rich hues of history, tradition, and innovation. Later, you visit the Sultan's kitchens, where master baristas prepare the day's brews for the court. You observe their precise methods: beans by hand, boiling water over glowing coals, and carefully watching the coffee as it bubbles and settles. The rituals here are both science and art, honed over decades and passed down through generations. You taste the morning's batch, noting its smooth balance and aromatic complexity. You remember the master blender's words about subtlety and contemplation, and you appreciate how these qualities are reflected not only in the final cup, but in every step of the process. As the day draws to a close, You walk along the Bosphorus, the city lights twinkling like distant stars reflected in the water. You carry with you the flavors and stories of the streets, the gardens, and the palace, each a thread woven into the intricate tapestry of your empire's coffee tradition. In this bustling metropolis, coffee is more than a drink. It is a ritual, a language, a bridge between peoples and places. Your journey through its many facets deepens your understanding and enriches your role as the empire's chief coffee taster. With a final sip from your cup, you feel a quiet satisfaction. Comfort of knowing you are part of a timeless story, one brewed slowly, savored deeply, and shared generously. You awaken to a soft dawn filtering through your quarters, the faint scent of coffee lingering like a gentle reminder of your duties ahead. Today, the palace calls you to a rare ceremonial gathering where the finest coffees from the farthest reaches of the Ottoman Empire will be presented and tasted. It is a ritual of both taste and diplomacy, where each sip carries weight beyond mere flavor. As you prepare, you reflect on the vastness of the empire, stretching from the deserts of Arabia to the lush hills of the Balkans, from the spice markets of Cairo to the silken bazaars of Baghdad. Each region brings its own signature beans and brewing methods, a testament to the empire's cultural mosaic and the movement of goods, peoples, and ideas. You arrive at the Grand Hall, where the ceremony is to be held, a space adorned with rich tapestries and intricate tilework that shimmer under the soft glow of oil lamps. Courtiers and dignitaries mill about, their robes whispering against the marble floors, voices low with anticipation. Among them are emissaries from distant provinces, each bearing gifts of precious beans wrapped carefully in embroidered cloth. The air is thick with a tapestry of aromas, spicy, floral, smokier, fragrant reminder of the empire's diversity. You notice the subtle hints of cardamom from the Arabian blends, the dark earthiness from the Anatolian mountains, and the bright, fruity notes from the Ethiopian varieties. The ceremony begins with an invocation, a traditional blessing asking for clarity of palate and mind. You feel the weight of centuries of tradition settle over the gathering, a moment where history and taste intertwine. One by one, the cups are presented. You lift each delicately, inhaling deeply before allowing the liquid to touch your tongue. The first sip reveals a bold, smoky profile, balanced by a gentle sweetness that lingers softly on the palate. The second offers a bright acidity, like citrus blossoms captured in liquid form. The third is smooth and velvety, with whispers of honey and spice. As you proceed, you note the subtle differences shaped by terroir and technica volcanic. Soil imparting a mineral sharpness, the slow roasting bringing out caramelized undertones, the addition of local herbs weaving layers of complexity. You remember a curious historical debate. Some scholars argue that Ottoman coffee culture was less about the beans themselves and more about the elaborate ceremonies surrounding their consumption, a point that stirs occasional discussion among connoisseurs. The event also serves as a political stage. Beneath the polite exchanges and shared cups, alliances are forged and rivalries navigated. You sense the undercurrents of power as emissaries subtly vie to impress the Sultan through the quality of their offerings. The master blender consults quietly with the Sultan's advisors, discussing how best to incorporate these diverse flavors into the imperial collection. Between tastings, you observe the courtier's rituals, gentle swirls of the cup, the careful inhalation of steam, the murmured evaluations passed among connoisseurs. It strikes you how much the experience transcends the beverage itself, becoming a shared language of refinement and respect. A storyteller near you recounts the legend of a mysterious blend, said to bring visions of far-off lands and ancient wisdom. You smile at the romanticism but cannot deny the allure such stories lend to the ritual. After hours of tasting and discussion, the Sultan rises to make his choice. His preference leans towards a blend that balances boldness with subtlety. A reflection, perhaps, of the empire itself, complex, multifaceted, and ever-evolving. As the ceremony concludes, you are left with a profound sense of connection, only to the coffee, but to the people and stories woven into its journey. The empire's vastness is contained within each cup, a microcosm of history, culture, and human ingenuity. Walking back through the palace corridors, you carry with you the lingering aromas and the echoes of shared moments. You think of the hands that harvested these beans, the merchants who transported them across deserts and seas, the artisans who crafted the cups, and the countless rituals that turn a simple drink into a sacred experience. In the quiet of your quarters, you prepare a final cup, savoring the warmth and the subtle dance of flavors. You let your thoughts drift, carried on the gentle tide of memories and dreams. This day, like so many before it, reminds you that your role as the empire's chief coffee taster is not merely a job, but a journey, a slow, unfolding story told. Sip by sip, cup by cup, in the endless rhythm of history's brew. You awaken to a soft, amber light filtering through the latticed windows of your quarters. The familiar scent of freshly ground coffee beans curling in the air like an old friend's embrace. Today, your work takes you beyond the palace walls and into the imperial gardens, where the empire's fascination with botany and sensory pleasures intertwines with the story of coffee itself. As you step into the garden's cool embrace, the scent of blooming jasmine mingles with the earthy aroma of damp soil and the faint trace of roasting beans from a nearby pavilion. The gardens are a living museum, filled with plants brought from every corner of the empire's citrus trees, from the Mediterranean, spices from India, and rare flowers from the farthest reaches of Asia. You stroll past carefully tended rows of coffee plants, their glossy green leaves vibrant against the manicured earth. You trace your fingers lightly over the branches heavy with ripe red berries, the raw promise of the beloved brew. The Ottoman sultans were avid patrons of gardens, seeing them as earthly paradises and symbols of power and refinement. These gardens were not only for leisure, but also served as experimental grounds for cultivating plants and refining tastes. You imagine the meticulous care taken to nurture these coffee plants, a delicate art passed down through generations. Historians still debate whether the Ottoman gardens were primarily utilitarian or primarily aesthetic. But walking here, you sense a harmonious balance between function and beauty. You pause near a small pavilion where the chief botanist prepares a new coffee blend, mixing beans with aromatic herbs harvested from the garden. The botanist explains how subtle infusions and rose petals, mint transformed the coffee into a multi-sensory experience, echoing the layered tastes that define Ottoman cuisine. Sampling a cup of this blend, you notice how the floral notes soften the bitterness, creating a drink that is both soothing and invigorating. You marvel at how such innovations have helped coffee evolve beyond a simple beverage into a cultural symbol further into the garden. You find a quiet nook where poets and philosophers once gathered to share verses and ideas over steaming cups. You settle into a stone bench, the coolness grounding you as you sip the coffee and imagine their whispered conversations, debates on art, science, and the nature of existence, all punctuated by the comforting rhythm of brewing and sipping nearby. You spot a curious sight, a small box of coffee stones, hardened remnants of roasted beans used in early quality control experiments. This quirky artifact hints at the lengths taken to ensure consistency in flavor and quality long before modern technology. The empire's obsession with coffee extended into its laws and customs. You recall reading about regulations that governed everything from the temperature of the brew to the size of the serving cups, a delicate balance between indulgence and discipline. The gardeners tell you stories of rare pests that threatened the coffee plant's tiny insects that fed on the leaves, threatening to ruin entire crops. Their solutions ranged from natural repellents made from crushed herbs to ritual prayers, blending science with superstition. You reflect on the delicate dance between nature and human ingenuity that coffee cultivation embodies, a relationship that continues to evolve as the empire expands and modernizes. As the sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows across the garden paths, you take a final sip and breathe deeply. The rich aromas, the whispered histories, and the tactile beauty of the garden linger with you, a sensory symphony that enriches your understanding and deepens your appreciation. Walking back through the garden gates, you carry with you the tranquility of the space and the knowledge that coffee is more than a drink. It is a living, breathing tradition rooted in the earth, nurtured by hands both humble and noble. Tonight, as you rest, the gardens and their stories will weave through your dreams, a gentle reminder of the empire's rich tapestry and your place within its unfolding narrative. The morning air carries a faint chill as you make your way to the bustling spice market, the heart of the city's vibrant trade network. Here, the scent of cardamom, cinnamon, and clove mingles with the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee, a fragrant testament to the empire's intertwined love of spices and caffeine. Today, your mission is to explore how these exotic spices have influenced Ottoman coffee culture, adding layers of flavor and ritual to the simple act of brewing. You navigate narrow lanes lined with wooden stalls overflowing with sacks of spices, jars of dried herbs, and bundles of fragrant flowers. Merchants call out softly, their voices weaving a rhythmic hum beneath the cacophony of bargaining and laughter. You pause to examine a basket of green cardamom pods, their sharp, slightly sweet scent promising to elevate the coffee's flavor to new heights. Historically, the introduction of spices like cardamom and cinnamon into coffee was not merely about taste, but also about status and ceremony. A cup of spiced coffee signified hospitality, refinement, and the blending of cultures, a liquid bridge between East and West. You sample a vendor's freshly prepared cup, rich and velvety, its bitterness softened by the warm embrace of spices. The interplay of flavors is a dance on your tongue, each sip revealing new notes and depths. You learn that recipes varied widely across regions, with some blends including rosewater or even saffron, a precious addition reserved for the elite. As You continue your journey through the market. You encounter a group of women weaving baskets and preparing aromatic sachets filled with coffee grounds and herbs, designed to scent the home and ward off ill spirits. This tradition, little known outside the region, speaks to the multifaceted role coffee played beyond mere consumption. You reflect on the curious debate among historians about whether the spicing of coffee was primarily for flavor enhancement, or for its supposed medicinal and spiritual properties. Some argue the spices were believed to aid digestion and boost vitality, while others see them as cultural symbols woven into social rituals. Passing a stall with an array of copper, says this small pots designed for brewing Turkish coffee. Observe the craftsmanship involved. Each pot's shape and size affect the brewing process and final flavor, a subtle art mastered by generations of artisans. The coffee and spice trade was a complex network of merchants, caravans, and sea routes, stretching across continents. You consider the perilous journeys these goods undertook from Arabian deserts to Mediterranean portage, bean and pod, carrying stories of risk and reward. Later, you visit a modest tea house on the city's outskirts where locals gather to share news, stories, and of course, coffee. The ritual here is casual but no less significant. A reminder that coffee's power lies as much in connection as in taste. You sit quietly, watching as cups are poured, conversations ebb and flow, and laughter bubbles like the coffee itself. You think of how, despite centuries and empires, this simple pleasure remains a universal comfort. As the day fades, you carry with you the rich aromas, the vibrant stories, and the knowledge that coffee's journey is inseparable from the spices that have flavored it both literally and culturally since the earliest days of the empire. The night will find you steeped in these reflections, the gentle warmth of spiced coffee echoing softly in your thoughts as you drift toward sleep. The soft light of dawn stretches slowly across the palace courtyard, awakening the marble columns and intricate mosaics with a gentle glow. You find yourself once again in the company of the Sultan's inner circle, preparing for a day devoted to the art and science of coffee brewing, a ceremony that, while familiar, always holds new discoveries. Today, your role as the empire's chief coffee taster extends into the realm of alchemy and precision, where subtle variations in grind, water temperature, and brewing time are studied with almost sacred reverence. You begin by examining the freshly harvested beans, their glossy surfaces hinting at the careful roasting they've undergone. The roasting process, you know, is both an art and a science, capable of transforming raw beans into complex flavor profiles. Historically, Ottoman roasters developed unique techniques, adjusting the heat and duration to coax out notes of chocolate, caramel, or smoke. You recall a curious piece of lore whispered among coffee masters, the belief that roasting under certain phases of the moon could enhance the bean's flavor. While this sounds like superstition to you, it serves as a charming reminder of how intertwined coffee culture has always been with the rhythms of nature and human belief. The roasting chamber is a small, firelit room where the air hums with warmth and the rich scent of roasting beans. You watch as the master roaster stirs the beans in a copper pan, his movements precise and practiced. The sound of soft crackling and popping adds to the sensory tapestry of the experience. Next comes the grinding, once done by hand with stone, mortar, now aided by finely crafted wooden mills. The grind size is crucial. Too coarse, and the brew will be weak and watery. Too fine, and it will be bitter and over-extracted. The perfect grind strikes a balance, releasing the beans' nuanced flavors gradually and gently. You recall the ongoing scholarly debate about the exact origins of the Ottoman coffee grinder and whether its design was influenced more by earlier Middle Eastern devices or European innovations. Regardless, the grinder's elegance and utility are undeniable, a testament to centuries of refinement. Water temperature, too, is vital. Unlike the boiling method common in many cultures, Ottoman coffee preparation often involves gently heating water just below boiling to preserve delicate aromas. You lean close, feeling the warmth radiate from the brass cest, watching the first foamy bubbles rise as the coffee slowly brews. The foam or kaymak is prized for its velvety texture and is considered a mark of a well-prepared cup. You carefully spoon some into a small, ornate cup, taking a moment to admire the rich color and inviting aroma as you sip. The flavors unfold, earthy sweet, with a whisper of bitterness that lingers softly. You think about the centuries of practice and experimentation that have culminated in this moment, how each sip connects you to a vast lineage of tasters and brewers. The ceremonial aspect of coffee preparation also reflects social hierarchies and cultural norms. You note how the presentation and serving order in the palace follow strict protocols, from the placement of cups to the gestures accompanying each pour dot. The coffee master's assistant tells you stories of how some sultans were known for their fastidiousness, rejecting cups that lacked the perfect balance or foam, their preferences shaping the development of brewing techniques over decades. Beyond the palace, coffee brewing varies widely across the empire's regions, with local ingredients and customs adding unique twists. Some areas infuse the brew with wild herbs. Others prefer it stronger or more diluted, reflecting diverse tastes and traditions. You pause to consider the role of coffee houses as social hubs, places where ideas ferment alongside the coffee itself. These venues, sometimes called schools of the wise, fostered philosophical debates, poetry recitals, and political discussions, their smoky air thick with intellect and camaraderie. Historians still argue about the extent to which coffee houses influenced the political life of the empire, with some suggesting they were hotbeds of dissent, while others see them primarily as cultural and intellectual centers. In your quiet moments, you reflect on how the technical precision of coffee brewing embodies a broader human desire to perfect, to understand, to create beauty from raw materials. It's a ritual of patience and care, a small act of mindfulness amid the empire's vast and sometimes chaotic history as the sun sets. Casting a golden glow through stained glass windows, you prepare a final cup, savoring the depth and complexity. Born from this day's explorations, the taste lingers on your tongue, a subtle reminder that coffee is much more than a beverage. It is a craft, a culture, and a history steeped in every drop. The morning mist still clings to the rooftops of the city as you make your way toward the Imperial Library, a sanctuary of knowledge nestled within the palace walls. Here, amidst towering shelves lined with leather-bound volumes and delicate manuscripts, you intend to delve into the written history and cultural significance of coffee in the Ottoman Empire. Your role as the chief coffee taster has long been intertwined with scholarship. After all, understanding the origins, preparation, and symbolism of coffee is as important as savoring its flavor. The library's air is cool and carries the faint scent of aged parchment and wood polish. Sunlight filters softly through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the stone floor. You run your fingers along the spines of ancient texts, many written in elegant Ottoman Turkish calligraphy, others in Arabic or Persian. Reflecting the empire's vast cultural connections, your first stop is a manuscript chronicling the introduction of coffee to Istanbul in the mid-16th century. According to this text, coffee first arrived through the port of Yemen and quickly captured the curiosity of merchants and nobles alike. The manuscript recounts early debates about the drink's effect. Some praised its invigorating qualities, while others expressed concern about its potential to overstimulate the mind and spirit. You smile to yourself, imagining those first tastings in the palace's shadowed halls and bustling markets. You're reminded of a fringe theory you once read, suggesting that coffee's rise was partly driven by Ottoman attempts to control opium use, as coffee was seen as a less dangerous stimulant alternative. Whether or not this is true, it adds a fascinating layer to the beverage's complex social history. Turning a delicate page, you find a treatise on coffee's medicinal properties. The author extols coffee's virtues as a remedy for headaches, digestive troubles, and even melancholy. This aligns with your own experience of the beverage's calming yet alerting effects, a paradox that has long intrigued scholars and connoisseurs alike. You pause, reflecting on the scholarly debate about whether coffee's reputation as a medicine was primarily based on empirical observation or cultural symbolism. Was it truly healing, or did its perceived benefits stem from its role in social rituals and psychological comfort? Deeper in the library, you discover a collection of poetry and prose dedicated to coffee, revealing how the drink inspired not only palate, but also imagination. Verses compare coffee's dark color to the night sky and its bitter taste to the complexities of love and life. One particularly charming poem speaks of a coffee cup as a vessel of secrets and whispered dreams, a metaphor that resonates deeply with you. As you read, you notice a marginal note about an unusual practice. Some Ottoman nobles reportedly used coffee grounds in beauty treatments, believing that the fine particles exfoliated skin and that caffeine's stimulating properties enhanced complexion. This quirky detail adds yet another facet to coffee's cultural role, blending the practical with the poetic. Your exploration leads you to a fascinating section detailing the social functions of coffee houses or kavahain, established as public gathering spaces. These venues became centers of artistic and political discourse, attracting poets, musicians, and thinkers. You imagine the lively yet relaxed atmosphere, cups, clinking conversations weaving through philosophy, music filling the air. However, the texts also reveal episodes of tension, with authorities occasionally viewing coffee houses as potential sites of sedition and moral decay. This ambivalence toward coffee culture reflects the broader challenges of managing social change in a sprawling empire. You reflect on how coffee's place in Ottoman society mirrors its complex flavor simultaneously, soothing and stimulating, uniting and dividing, comforting and challenging. It is no wonder that historians continue to debate its true impact, with some emphasizing its role in cultural cohesion and others focusing on its disruptive potential. In a quiet corner, you find a dusty journal belonging to a 17th century traveler. who detailed the experience of visiting a coffee house for the first time. The traveler describes the sensory overload, the thick aroma, the dark liquid served in tiny cups, the ritual of fortune-telling using coffee grounds, and the gentle hum of conversation punctuated by laughter. This fortune-telling tradition, known as tasseography, fascinated you as a curious blend of superstition and social entertainment. People would interpret the patterns left by grounds in the cup, weaving stories and predictions are gentle. Reminder that coffee drinking was not just a taste experience, but a shared cultural practice. As the afternoon sun wanes, you close the manuscripts and gather your notes, feeling a profound connection to the scholars, poets, and common folk who have contributed to coffee's enduring legacy. The library's hushed ambience encourages reflection, and you savor the quiet before returning to the bustling life beyond these walls. Walking back through the palace gardens, you carry with you a new appreciation for coffee's layered history, only as a drink, but as a cultural force that shaped rituals, inspired art, and fostered community across centuries. Tonight, as you prepare your own cup, you'll remember the voices and stories preserved in these ancient texts, their whispers echoing softly in the steam rising from your cup, inviting you to rest, reflect, and dream. The soft glow of lantern light spills over the polished surfaces of the palace's private chambers as evening settles into the city, drawing a curtain of quiet over the bustling streets outside. Tonight, your focus shifts from the academic and ceremonial aspects of coffee to the personal and intimate moments it inspires. Those quiet interludes where the empire's most powerful sip their brew and muse on life, power, and the fragile nature of existence. As the chief coffee taster, you have been granted rare access to these moments, observing not only the taste, but the subtle rituals and emotions. Entwined with each cup, you settle into a cushioned alcove adorned with intricate tilework and heavy silks, the air scented faintly with jasmine and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Your thoughts drift to the sultans themselves, the rulers who, beneath their imposing thrones and vast responsibilities, shared the simple pleasure of coffee. Imagine Sultan Ahmed I gazing through latticed windows toward the Bosphorus, a small cup warming his hands as he contemplates state matters or personal reflections. The coffee is a companion to his solitude, a momentary escape from the weight of empire. It's fascinating to consider how these private coffee rituals might have influenced decisions that shaped history. Historians still argue whether coffee truly played a role in diplomatic meetings or if it merely softened the edges of tense conversations. But you suspect that the act of sharing a cup, the gentle clink of porcelain, and the slow savoring of bitter warmth helped create a space for trust and understanding. You recall a quirky anecdote about Sultan Murad IV, who was famously strict and even banned coffee at times due to fears of unrest sparked in coffee houses. Yet, in the privacy of his chambers, he reportedly enjoyed the drink, illustrating the complex relationship between authority, personal indulgence, and public policy. Turning your attention to the coffee cups themselves, you notice their exquisite craftsmanship, delicate porcelain from distant China, ornate silver cups encrusted with gems, and simple earthenware favored by the common folk. Each vessel reflects its owner's status and taste, yet all serve the same humble liquid that unites the empire's diverse people. The sound of water gently boiling in the brass says blends with the soft murmur of conversation and the occasional clatter of chess pieces on a nearby board, coffee here is not just a beverage. It is an experience that engages all senses. The slight bitterness awakens the palate, the deep aroma stimulates memories, and the warmth soothes the spirit. In these intimate settings, coffee often accompanies storytelling tales of distant lands, heroic deeds, and whimsical legends. You yourself have shared many such stories, weaving gentle humor and vivid detail into the fabric of history. It's a tradition that stretches back centuries, reminding you that every cup carries not just flavor, but a narrative. One such story tells of a Janissary soldier who claimed his life was saved by coffee during a grueling campaign. According to legend, a hurried cup helped him stay alert through a night watch, a simple act that altered the course of his fate. While historians debate the veracity of this tale, it highlights coffee's role as a companion in both hardship and respite. You think about the sensory contrast between the bustling palace grounds and these quiet chambers. Outside, merchants shout their wares and horses clatter over cobblestones. Inside, the world narrows to the circle of friends or advisors, the steam curling from tiny cups, and the gentle crackle of a brazier's fire. There's a delicate balance. Here the empire's grandeur and the simple humanity revealed in moments of shared coffee. This duality fascinates you and shapes your understanding of the drink as more than a stimulant. It is a vessel of connection, a silent language spoken through taste and ritual. You notice a slight chill in the air and pull your robe tighter, savoring the comforting warmth spreading from the coffee cup through your fingers. The room's quiet encourages reflection, and you let your mind wander to the myriad unseen faces behind each sip. The traders, bringing beans from distant lands, the roasters perfecting their craft, the coffee servers moving gracefully through the halls, their stories, often overlooked, remind you that history is not only about rulers and battles, but about everyday lives shaped by simple pleasures and routines. Coffee, in this sense, becomes a bridge between worlds past and present, elite and commoner, solitude and community. As you finish your cup, you feel a gentle calm settle over you. The complexity of the empire, its contradictions and charms, distills into this small moment of warmth and quiet. You carry this feeling with you as the lantern light flickers and dims, inviting sleep to take you into its gentle embrace. In the stillness, the legacy of coffee whispers softly, a reminder that even in the grandest histories, it is often the smallest rituals that offer the deepest comfort. Night deepens outside the palace walls as you slip through shadowed corridors, the faint echo of your footsteps mingling with the soft murmur of distant voices. The world of the Ottoman court feels alive yet hushed, a delicate balance between grandeur and intimacy. Tonight, your journey takes you beyond the Sultan's chambers and public coffeehouses to explore the fascinating role of women in coffee culture, those often unseen figures whose influence was quiet yet profound. You imagine the women of the imperial harem, a vast and complex world unto itself, where power was wielded in whispers and glances rather than proclamations. Within these intricately decorated quarters, coffee was more than a drink. It was a ritual woven into daily life, a source of comfort, social bonding, and subtle diplomacy. The chief coffee taster's duties extended here, ensuring the brew met the discerning tastes of the Sultan's favorites and concubines. As you picture the scene, the air scented faintly with rosewater and simmering spices, You envision ladies reclining on silk cushions, delicate porcelain cups cradled in their hands. Conversation flows softly, punctuated by laughter and the occasional poetic exchange. Coffee serves as both lubricant and companion in these intimate gatherings. Historians still debate how much agency women held in shaping Ottoman coffee culture. Some argue that their role was limited by the strict social codes, while others point to evidence of influential female patrons who commissioned coffee sets, managed private coffee ceremonies, and even influenced palace policies. This ambiguity invites you to ponder the subtle ways power can manifest beyond public view. One intriguing account speaks of Sultan, one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history. She reportedly used coffee gatherings as a venue to foster alliances and exchange political intelligence. Reminder that the simple act of sharing coffee could be a tool of statecraft. Though details remain shrouded in mystery, this story hints at the layered meanings hidden beneath the surface of social rituals. You recall reading about coffee's presence in women's poetry and literature, where it often symbolizes both desire and restraint, warmth and distance. The drink becomes a metaphor for the complexity of their experiences, both confined and expansive. In one poetic fragment, coffee is described as a dark fire in a silver cup, a vivid image that captures its paradoxical nature. Beyond the palace, you think about the women who managed coffee houses in urban neighborhoods, a role often overshadowed by male proprietors. These women navigated social expectations and economic realities to carve out spaces where community and conversation flourished. Their stories, less documented but no less vital, remind you of the diverse tapestry of coffee culture across the empire. A quirky detail catches your attention. Some women reportedly flavored their coffee with rare ingredients, rose petals, cardamom, even saffron, creating personalized blends that reflected individual tastes and local traditions. These subtle variations added richness to the coffee experience, much like the women who crafted them. The sensory world of these moments is vivid: the gentle clink of cups, the soft steam rising like morning mist, the scent of spices mingling with freshly brewed coffee. You imagine how these experiences soothed anxieties, fostered friendships, and offered brief escapes from daily challenges as your mind drifts through these scenes. You recall the scholarly debate about whether coffee culture helped reinforce social boundaries or served as a space for crossing them. Did coffee ceremonies in the haram reinforce hierarchies, or did they provide moments of shared humanity that transcended rank? Perhaps both truths coexist, layered like the complex flavors in a finely brewed cup. You consider how the coffee taster's role, while officially male and public, was intimately connected to these hidden networks. Your tastings were shaped by the preferences and practices of women whose voices history often muffles. Recognizing their influence deepens your appreciation for the drink's cultural resonance. The night grows cooler, and the palace settles into quiet rhythm. You sip from your own cup, feeling the warmth spread through your fingers and up your arms, grounding you in this moment of reflection. The legacy of Ottoman coffee culture feels alive, not only in grand halls, but in these softer, quieter spaces, where history's subtle currents flow as you prepare to rest. You carry with you the stories of women who brewed, shared, and savored coffee, their presence woven invisibly into the empire's vast narrative. Their contributions remind you that history is a mosaic of many voices, each adding color and texture to the whole. Tonight, as the city sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, you find comfort in the knowledge that coffee, this simple, humble drink, has been a source of connection, pleasure, and quiet power for countless generations. The dawn's first pale light filters gently through the ornate lattice windows, casting delicate patterns on the marble floors of the palace. The world feels hushed, as if holding its breath in anticipation of the new day. Here you are again, cup in hand, ready to explore the final, most reflective moments of your journey, the legacy of the Ottoman Empire's chief coffee taster, the end of an era, and the quiet ways coffee's influence lingers beyond the empires. Fall, you feel the soft heat of the porcelain cup warming your palms, the bittersweet aroma curling into your senses like an old friend's whispered secret. The empire itself, vast and intricate, was more than just a collection of lands and peoples. It was a living mosaic of cultures, traditions, and rituals. Coffee, once a foreign curiosity, had become a symbol of refinement, community, and subtle diplomacy. And you, the chief coffee taster, played a silent but pivotal role in weaving this fabric. As you let your thoughts drift, you reflect on how the empire's decline in the 19th and early 20th centuries transformed its relationship with coffee. The once glorious courts and bustling coffee houses saw changes, political upheavals. Modernization and shifting tastes gradually reshaped the landscape. Yet, despite these transformations, coffee remained a constant companion in daily life, a comforting ritual amid uncertainty. Historians still debate the extent to which Ottoman coffee culture influenced modern cafe traditions worldwide. Some argue that European coffee houses owe much to the Ottoman model, with their emphasis on socializing, storytelling, and leisurely conversation. Others suggest parallel developments occurred independently, shaped by local customs and commerce. Whatever the case, the legacy is undeniable. Coffee's journey from the Ottoman Empire echoes through time and space, bridging continents and centuries. One charming, lesser-known anecdote from the twilight years of the empire involves an elderly coffee taster who reputedly retained his discerning palate despite the political chaos surrounding him. Legend says he could identify the origin of a coffee bean by scent alone, a skill passed down through generations. Like a treasured family secret, such stories humanize history, reminding you that behind grand events lie individuals bound by passion and dedication. Your mind wanders to the sensory pleasures that sustained you throughout this journey, the deep, earthy aroma of roasted beans, the subtle bitterness balanced by hints of spice and sweetness, the warmth that spreads with each sip. These sensations transcend mere taste. They evoke memories, moods, and moments of connection. Remember that first cup you tasted, the trembling anticipation as you awaited the verdict. Such intimate experiences remain etched in history's quiet corners. You also ponder the scholarly debates around coffee's social impact. Did the spread of coffee houses foster intellectual ferment and cultural exchange, or did they simply offer a benign distraction from political tensions? Perhaps coffee houses were both salons of enlightenment and refuges of repose. Reflecting the complexity of human society, there is also the question of how coffee culture intersected with gender roles, class distinctions, and religious practices. The chief coffee taster's position was undeniably prestigious, but the drink itself permeated all levels of society, from sultans to street vendors. This democratization of coffee reveals its power as a social equalizer. Even within a rigidly hierarchical empire, a quirky detail from this era includes the use of coffee grounds for fortune-telling, a playful tradition that continues in some cultures today. After drinking the last sip, the cup would be turned upside down, allowing the grounds to form patterns interpreted by skilled readers. This whimsical practice adds a layer of mystique to the otherwise grounded ritual. As you cradle your cup, you feel a sense of closure mixed with gentle melancholy. The empire that nurtured this rich coffee culture has faded, yet the echoes remain woven into modern rituals, shared stories, and the simple pleasure of a warm beverage. You take a slow, deliberate sip, savoring the complexity and history swirling within the liquid. The coffee's warmth spreads through you, grounding you in this moment of reflection. The stories you've gathered, the lives touched, the traditions sustained form a tapestry that is as rich and nuanced as the brew itself. Now, as the day begins anew outside, you prepare to leave this world behind, carrying with you a quiet gratitude for the many unseen hands that shaped history through their devotion to coffee. Slowly, your breathing deepens, the pace of your thoughts softens, and the lantern light dims to a soothing glow. The palace, the empire, and your role within it fade gently into the background, replaced by a calm stillness that invites rest. Remember, dear listener, that history is not always a grand spectacle. It often lives in the small, comforting rituals that connect us across time and space. Coffee, in all its humble glory, is one such thread. Now, dim the lights further, nestle into your pillow, and let the warmth of this story lull you into peaceful slumber as your eyelids grow heavier and the quiet of the night deepens. Allow the gentle rhythms of the Ottoman coffee tale to wash over you like a soft tide. Picture the slow swirl of dark liquid in an ornate cup, its scent weaving through cool, fragrant air, mingling with whispers of history that settle around you like a comforting shawl. The bustle of centuries past fades away, replaced by stillness and warmth. Imagine yourself cradled in a quiet corner of a palace chamber or a humble coffee house, where the delicate clink of porcelain and low laughter drift softly through the air. Each sip of coffee brings a subtle embracer, reminder of shared moments, stories exchanged, and lives intertwined. The empire's grand arc has softened into these intimate spaces, where history feels close, gentle, and kind. Let the memories of these scenes guide you toward rest. The shimmering Bosphorus at dawn, the glow of lanterns in quiet halls, the whispered poetry of forgotten queens, and the patient craft of ancient tasters all converge in a soothing mosaic. Your breath slows, your muscles relax, and the narrative fades like twilight turning to night. Sleep now, wrapped in the warmth of this story, carrying with you the calm and the quiet beauty of a world shaped by simple rituals and shared humanity. Tomorrow awaits, but for now you are safe, held softly by the past and gently cradled by the present. Good night,